so much for being here, and welcome to another episode of the Cattle USA Daily Podcast. I have been taking some time recently and thinking a lot about the shift that we're seeing right now in the beef industry. More ranchers are exploring direct beef sales. It sounds like a great idea, right? You get to cut out the middleman, sell directly to the consumer, and hopefully make a little bit more money for all of the hard work that you're putting in, right? But the truth is, direct beef sales are not for everyone. And there are some big challenges that come with starting and trying to take this on. So I want to take some time today to break it all down and talk about the realities of running a direct beef sales operation. First up, let's talk about processing. When you're selling beef directly to consumers, you're not just running cattle through a local auction barn anymore. You need to get those animals processed, and that requires a facility that meets all the proper regulations. And here's the kicker. Securing slaughter dates and keeping up with inspection requirements can be a real headache. I'm sure a lot of you already know this, but getting beef processed at the right time is a game of practice. The problem is, if you're trying to work with a small processor or you're in a part of the country with limited processing capacity, the waiting list can be months long. For some producers, that just isn't practical, and it creates a backlog that makes managing a direct beef sales business a lot harder. Plus, you've got to think about storage and packaging. You need space to store that beef until it's sold and distributed, and it's got to be stored properly so it stays safe and fresh for your customers. If you don't have the right facilities to keep things running smoothly, you're running yourself into a lot of potential issues. All right, so now that you've got your beef processed, here comes another big challenge: marketing. In the traditional cattle business, you just take your cattle to the sale barn and someone else handles the selling and all of the rest of the stuff. But when you're selling directly to consumers, you're responsible for building a brand, creating awareness, and making sure people know about your beef. This part isn't always easy, especially if you don't have a lot of marketing experience. You've got to invest in branding, creating a website, advertising on social media, and all of the other things that it takes to get to reaching to customers. And even when you do all that work, you might find that building a loyal customer base takes longer than you ever expected. The truth is, getting people to trust your product and invest in it takes time. And it's a lot more work than just selling cattle at the sale barn. And let's be honest, if you're already juggling the daily operations of running a ranch, adding all this marketing on top of it can be a real struggle. Now, let's talk money. Starting a direct beef sales business isn't cheap. There are a lot of upfront costs: getting your cattle processed, buying the right equipment, setting up packaging and labeling, and of course, marketing. All of that requires an investment before you even start to see a return. If you're a smaller operation, this initial financial burden can be a tough one to manage. You've got to make sure the business can turn a profit before you get in too deep. If you can't sell enough beef to make your investment back, it could end up costing you way more than it's even worth. And that's a risk a lot of ranchers aren't willing to take, especially when beef prices fluctuate and consumer demand is not always a guarantee. When you're working with direct sales, you're also dealing with the logistics of getting that beef to your customers. If you don't have a reliable way to store, package, and deliver your beef, it can cause a serious headache. Whether you're shipping it out or making deliveries locally, it still requires a very well-organized system. And let's not forget about storage. Again, freezing and keeping beef fresh at all stages of the distribution process is crucial. It can be a logistical nightmare for some producers, especially if you don't have the right infrastructure in place. Another thing to consider is how market demand can fluctuate. As much as we'd like to think we've got control over our product, consumer demand can shift. One month, you might have a line of customers waiting for your beef, but the next, you might find yourself with way too much product and no one there to buy it. When you're selling directly to consumers, you're dependent on people who are willing to pay a premium for high quality beef. But what happens when they can't afford it? Or when they start to shop around for other options? The market can be volatile, and that unpredictability can create financial stress for producers who are trying to make ends meet. Running a direct beef sales business isn't just about selling meat, it's also about doing everything else: processing, packaging, storing, delivering, and dealing with customer inquiries. If you already have a full-time ranch operation, adding the extra labor of managing a direct beef sales business can lead to burnout. Many ranchers simply just don't have the time to dedicate to building a small and successful direct beef sales business. You're already working from sunup to sundown as it is. Adding on this additional work can stretch you too thin and affect the quality of the work that you're already doing on the ranch. Finally, let's talk about scalability. Scaling up a direct beef sales operation is no easy feat. As demand grows, you need to expand processing, storage, and distribution. And if you're not set up to handle that kind of growth, you could hit a wall pretty darn quickly. For smaller operations, there's a ceiling on how much they can sell directly before they start running into these logistical and just infrastructure problems. Without significant investment in equipment and facilities, the growth potential can be very limited. So, is direct beef sales for everyone? The short answer is no. It can be a great option for some, offering higher profit margins and more control over your product, but it's not without its upfront challenges. The upfront costs, marketing efforts, logistical complexities, and the time commitments can be overwhelming for smaller operations or those who don't have the resources to scale quickly. Before jumping into beef sales, it's important to evaluate whether you have the capacity, time, and financial resources to make it work. For some ranchers, sticking with traditional cattle sales or exploring other markets might actually just be the better option. At the end of the day, the key is to know what works best for your operation. If direct beef sales seem like a good fit, then please go for it. But be prepared for what it takes to make it successful. Thank you guys so much for listening. I hope that this gave you a better idea of whether or not this path is right for you. And we're excited to continue just talking more about cattle markets and everything else going on within our industry. If you guys have any topics you would like us to discuss on here, please let us know in the caption or show notes or things like that. As always, we will see you all tomorrow on another episode. Have a great rest of your day, y'all.